Are we live? We are live. Okay, so this is the Stephen definitely gonna be funny looks while I do my edit breakdown. I'm gonna ramble for the next like half an hour. So this is my edit breakdown of Hell to the Cradle. You're welcome, Harrison. I think it might not be as long as Underneath the Earth, but it's definitely gonna be a bit more intricate because there's a lot more little moving parts that we're working with here. So I think we will first actually start off with the new logo I've got here, if you want to have a quick look at that. It's pretty set. It's pretty set. So this logo is animated. I'm just going to mute that for a second. This logo is animated by Fraser, bless him, which was very lovely of him, and it came out really well. And yeah, this is basically now kind of my new intro. It might change it every time we do a different project, but for the most part, this is like the main new intro that we have here, which is used at the beginning here. So this is great. This is basically, this is all of it put together. This is all of it put together, basically, all these different segments put together, which is really handy. So if you change something, like for example, if I change something just to get a shot, it will just automatically update it here, which is really handy. So now you can actually see here a very quick kind of teaser as to what was really the bread and butter of this project, which was this very strong it's very strong use of is there a way to just mute all the audio? Yeah. There's very strong use of directional blur, like constant directional blur. You can see it here when it kind of gets hit and that kind of thing. And the main reason I introduced this, I really wanted to introduce that kind of idea of physically feeling film. So I was like, okay, how can I do this? And I added these kind of like, these little micro kind of shakes and thumps to add impact stuff. That was kind of the bread of it. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. We should probably just start off with each scene. So this was the whiteboard scene. This is the first scene I started on, and is the opening. Now, originally I did not have this opening, but I decided halfway through I wanted some kind of additional context, so I added this, and it works really well. And this is such a bitch and a half to animate. Like it takes so long to kind of like add all these like words, and then I had to like keyframe all of them too. So all of these like keyframed basically to all fade in, fade out at the right times. That took so long, and there's no quick and easy solution necessarily. It kind of is, but it's like you don't get as much control if you go for the quick and easy solution. So I had to kind of get it on pace with the music, not too fast, not too slow. And we also used this fire underlayer thing with like these embers, which we could just rip straight off Google, off YouTube, and just put on. And it's a very subtle thing with the fades and that, but it goes really well with the music. Like it has a very like what the fuck's going on kind of vibe, and we like that. I think the strongest part of this entire scene will start off as the audio. So throughout this entire section, you have this thumping of the music, like in the different room, along these kind of cheering and this kind of like these voices in the background, and this really changed the entire audioscape, because before it didn't have this, and before it was kind of like there's not much to it, but adding the music, adding that kind of like that second layer, it's like you can still see her, hear her, see her, but you can also just feel this like large kind of party going on in a different room. It kind of just intrigues you so much more. And that was actually a last minute addition. Like I added that in quite late into the edit process, so that was quite a last minute addition. For the most here is an interesting little thing. So I had to speed up the footage here because basically this went out of focus. So I had to speed up the footage for it to go back into focus. Hopefully people don't really notice that. But yeah, this scene is quite simple. There's not really any crazy effects. It was really just kind of about getting it all put together. I think it's one of my kind of favorite intercuts. It's like starts from here and it's like a bang. Funny thing is though, if you turn up the brightness, you can actually see Scarlet in the corner here. You can't see it right now, but if I was to turn up the exposure real quick, yeah, there's Scarlet right there. Which is quite funny, but luckily we're hidden that with our brightness levels. But yeah, again, for the most part, it was a very kind of simple, just putting together. Not putting the pace too fast, kind of giving it a good pacing to it. I darkened this so you could only really see what was on the whiteboard, because I felt like you weren't really looking at the whiteboard, you were looking more at the two characters, so I kind of focused it more on the actual stuff on the whiteboard instead. But I think, yeah, really the bread and butter of the scene really is the audioscape. It completely transformed and just made everything feel a lot more kind of like, what the fuck is going on kind of thing. And it worked really well. But what we have here is the ending, because of how obviously a lot went wrong with the filming, so we kind of had to cut it up into sections. So what we had was here, I actually had to change this part. We've got this kind of like cool badass entrance, door opens. And it kind of just flicks between those. And I thought it was a very effective use of it, to be honest with you. It really brings them as these big, larger-than-life kind of characters. Interesting thing here is, though, is that we filmed this in slow motion. I actually found it was too slow. So I had to kind of balance between speeding it up and not speeding it so much it loses its slow motion. An unfortunate thing here, actually, if you can see if I can get the keyframes into this. Time and speed. I actually had to readjust the speed here because what was happening is his head turn was too his head turn was too slow. So I had to speed up the head turn, but then I think you can see a bit of a jitter when it happens. I had to speed up the head turn and then slow it back down to kind of make that work because it was just a bit too slow. But other than that, the rest of them I kind of kept in the speed. I think I put them like 150% speed because they were just too slow about it. But it went really well with the music, as you can kind of hear here. Works really well. I think another interesting thing I really liked was that the music starts off like in the beginning, but then slowly you start hearing the crowds come in before you actually get to Faith, which I thought was a nice little touch, because it kind of felt like it's almost like she's asleep in this section. I mean, she is kind of asleep, but she's asleep in this section, and she's kind of slowly waking up as this fades out, which I thought was kind of an interesting thought to have about it. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's pretty much that kind of section. Again, this was more of a simpler. This didn't take me long. This is one of the first ones I got done quite quickly. So, yeah. We're moving on to now Joseph getting shot. So this is where our little bread and butter of the fun little whams and the bams and the kind of additional effects there come in. And this is great because this shows you all three iterations of like the visual blur that I introduced. So first of all, we have the first technique was basically you get an adjustment layer, which you add a directional blur onto. So I have this set to 17 because I don't want it too high. And basically this kind of like if I was turning this off, it would literally just be like that. It doesn't really add much. So what you do is here you got this bit of a subtle blur, but you can see here this one still has blur too. So what's causing the blur in this video? Well, basically, along with adding these overlaid blurs, see this kind of doesn't, it still has the blur but it doesn't move around as much, whereas this kind of adds a bit more kind of all around shake. So basically these shakes more affect the actual frame, like affects the frame itself, whereas the blurs that we add to the actual video are more actual physical blurs. So the key thing about directional blur is that you can adjust the direction of it, as you can see here. So the blur streaks which way it's blurring towards. So basically, as you can see for the keyframes here, what I'm doing is I'm not only adjusting the blur length, which is basically how blurry it is, but I'm also adjusting the direction of the blur as it's happening. So you can see that it's like rotating every frame, which just adds a lot more tactility to it, really. I mean, if I was to remove that, for example, like, see, that's just it without anything. So I actually also did add some micro camera movement on this one too. I keep forgetting to add that because this wasn't originally in it, but I actually did add camera tracking, and you can actually see here the path of it, and you can see it kind of goes up, down, back and around, and I tried to emulate what an actual camera would be like tracking out. Instead of just going like left, right, it actually kind of goes like up, down, and around. It's got actual inertia to it, and that was very important to kind of actually add inertia to the camera shake instead of it just being like the bit comes from the directional blur, because as you can see here, without the directional blur, it is just kind of like and if you add this in, it only kind of adds in Not a lot really. It's a lot less. It's a lot more subtle. This kind of overlay blur. The real bread and butter comes from the directional blur placed on top of it, and that's the same here. So here, for example, again we've got that kind of like frame micro jitter. That gives us just a bit of a foundation to work from. We've also got a lot of additional camera movement keyframed in here. So it's actually scaled in at first. It actually punches in when he gets hit, and then brings back out as the camera shakes out. So it's almost like, again, the camera's like readjusting. We're following that inertia, as you see here. We're following a path where it's kind of going up and down and around. And you can see here it works quite well, like punching in. And again, it's not meant to be in your face. It's meant to be quite subtle. Like the punch-in's meant to be quite subtle, but you can see it and you can feel it, and that's the whole point. You're not meant to kind of actively feel it out. You're meant not actively see it out. You're meant to feel it out, and that's kind of the most important aspect of it, really. And yet again, so here we have, yet again, we're readjusting the directional blur and that kind of stuff. Honestly, at this point, this doesn't add much, because this is what I was originally starting with these little micro blurs at the top, but eventually I kind of started applying it to the clip itself, because it kind of does the same thing. It's a bit more hard to work with, but it kind of does the same thing. But it's also, yeah, again, it's just, this is kind of like a foundation to work from. You kind of apply this, and then you're like, okay, how do we want to work from there? Because without it, it's like fine, but the punching feels a lot more apparent, whereas with it, it kind of just very subtly kind of blurs the outside as it's moving, really. But I keep pressing the wrong one. Yeah, because it's like, it's just it's not very noticeable, but it's, yeah, again, the foundation we work from, and then we apply it all onto here. And again, here it punches in a bit too. Here you can see here the keyframing. See, this is what takes the most time, is these fucking keyframes, because there's like 100 of them, and you have to space them out right. And then if you want to readjust them, it's a pain in the ass to readjust them. You can actually see here, technically the frame actually goes out of the frame, but because it's so quick, you don't really see it, so it's fine. And as I was saying, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors with this kind of stuff. And here's a more stronger example of like using directional blur instead of it. So here, for example, yeah, again, it's like just a different way of doing it. Instead of applying it straight to the clip, I decided I wanted to do it as these little micro jutters, because, yeah, again, it spaces it out more evenly. So you have here, it changes the directional blur length between all of these. So it goes from like 150 degrees all the way to minus 600 degrees, and you get this kind of like warping effect. This is a lot more of a kind of completely obscured effect instead of it being subtle. But it's kind of meant to emulate the pain he's kind of in. The soundscape for this is quite similar to the other clip. So we have the underlying music later in the song. I chose not to add audience crowd into this because this is meant to be a bit more of an action scene, so it's kind of meant to focus more on the action. We also did a lot of Foley. I wouldn't say the Foley's amazing in this part. It's very hard sometimes to do Foley, and I need to get better at that. I was quite happy with the locking in sound. Like, that came out quite well. We'll just mute the music. Like, that came out really well. That was just a stapler. But those didn't come out as well, because it's just very hard to do. Funny thing here is these audio clips are actually from Tread Harshly. Well, not that. Some of these audio clips, like him getting like slapped there and here, are actually letter sounds that we used in Tread Harshly. So this is why you keep all your stuff, folks. Because I was like, I booted up my hard drive and I was like, Tread Harshly. I use like meaty sounds there, and I just literally ripped the audio from that, and you get a bit of a, like, you get a bit of that, you know. It's quite like yucky, and we like that. So I just thought it was cool. It's like, it's like stuff just carries over, really. Like this new film I'm doing like over a year later has still got stuff from Ted Harshly, and I just thought that was quite fun. But this was, yet again, a very simple scene to do. A lot of it was trying to get the music lined up too, because you wanted the music to feel like a bit lined up. Next up we have Briggson's speech. Now this was water break. This is where a lot of the bulk of it was, because there was a lot more insert shots in this. Like, compared to the whiteboard's longer, but because it's a lot more straightforward, it was a lot easier to do. Like, there's a lot less clips per minute than there are in Briggson's speech, because they're just longer clips, whereas Briggson's speech is a lot more little cuts. The soundscape for Breaks in Speech was very similar. Again, you've got this constant music in the background, and you've got the crowds going, and again, it just adds this layer that without it, it really was just like eerily quiet. Like, it's just kind of like, it's like, what the fuck? But then when you add this, it just completely changes the soundscape, and this is something I've really focused on. Like with Underneath the Earth, like we had great music tracks, obviously. Thank you, Harrison. Great music tracks, and that kind of really carried the film with its soundscape. But other than that, it was just kind of bird sounds. Really, it was just kind of like using the actual raw audio we got. I didn't really have to do any like additional Foley for that. Whereas here, we needed a lot more of a stronger bass because, like, you can't add bird sounds. You can't fill this place with bird sounds. It just wouldn't work. So what do we fill it with? We fill it with like club music, industrial music. Really give off that vibe that there's something going on around them. This was I love this shot. So matching this up was a bit tricky, but it was just about kind of like lining up the pace of it, getting it in the right place. You could use the comparison frames that basically split the screen in half, and you can compare where both of them are at the same time. I think it's this button here. Yeah. So I used that to just kind of help me guide it through so I can get it quite in line. So for the Foley here is quite good. Like this is actually Foley sounds you hear with the arms. Like that's quite. I'm happy with that. But cloves are a lot easier to do with Foley than they are with anything else like guns and that. So a concern I had to begin with, I'm switching between a wide angle lens and a 50mm lens. Like these shots are 50mm and then these ones are the wide angle lens. And you can see there is a lot more visual noise because the aperture is a lot smaller, so it doesn't look as crisp. But I'm still quite satisfied how it came out. I mean, I can't do much about it to be honest with you, but it's fine. Nothing super special here with like the editing. Again, it was just kind of like I was following the storyboards quite strongly. Because I'm quite strong with sticking to like storyboards and that. But yeah, again, for the most part, this was really simple to just kind of put together. There was no kind of like major things I had to change about any of these shots. It's really when we get to these shots over here where shit gets weird. So here we have a bit of a title drop, a bit of a kind of like stick it to the man moment, but as you can see, it doesn't go well for her. So a lot of work went into just from here to here, like so much work. It was insane. Because this is where, again, like influence in that feeling film kind of idea came in. You can see here, we've got our patented micro jitters to start us off. And then yet again, on the clip itself, we have keyframing for the actual motion of the screen. So it punches in for a second and moves around. You can see here it's the tracking of it. And yet again, it's a realistic motion. It's not just all over the place. It's actually following with it. So it's kind of starting from there, and it's like following to the left and then back around, recentering itself. Emulating how you track it in real life, really. But the thing is, I always say is like digital effects, like digital zooms, digital movement is not like a way to fix stuff you missed in actual filming. It is sometimes, obviously it is sometimes, but in the case here, it's actually more of a different aesthetic. It wouldn't have been the same if I'd done it physically in a way. And yeah, again here, we've also got additional direction below that changes direction to, like goes from minus 72. Usually the pattern was left, right, like minus 40, then minus 70, but sometimes I would do like minus 120 and then minus 40 to make it a bit more different. And yeah, again, this shot here, again, we use this kind of micro jitters, and it just works. Without it, it just feels a lot more kind of like. I mean, it doesn't change too much there. But if we were to delete the directional blur, yet again, it just kind of like not a lot. Just doesn't give you a lot. The directional blur really just adds proper subtle impact. It's like bam. Because again, we didn't have the most time to properly make it look like she's hitting him hard. So this kind of makes it feel a bit more convincing, really. The philosophy of the editing here, I took a lot of inspiration from Arcane, because Arcane often has a thing where it's like how it sets up one punch. It's got like the setup, so it's pulling the arm back, then it shows like she basically, like for example, the character Vi has like this mechanical fist. It's like the pulling back, the setup. You see the steam come out of it. You see the dial like charge up, and then it's a punch. And I really wanted to take that philosophy when I'm editing, where it's kind of like It's like first grab, and then bang, and it's not even like straight away bang. It's like a punch in shot first and then a hit, and that's kind of the editing philosophy I took, was like to double down and really kind of add these like impact sections. Even like this shot is like, this single shot is 0.05 seconds long, but it works. It just adds something to it, having that very brief move in. And yet again, you can actually see here it resets his head again. Like that's called like rubber banding editing, I believe, like where you basically show it once and then you show it again. And I think a good example I can think of immediately, if you watch Chappie, when Chappie grabs Hugh Jackman and chucks him into the roof, that's done rubber banded, so it shows him from one angle and then it shows it again from a different angle. It's like bang and then bang again. And I think it's like kind of ignoring continuity editing, I think it's also called. But yeah, as you can see here, it gets kind of freaky here. It gets a bit if you freeze it, it gets a bit freaky deaky here, as you can see. Like, what the fuck is going on there? Now this is like anime impact frames, I basically described him as, where it kind of goes black for a second, outlines him, and then kind of pulls out. And this was like really kind of hitting into that stylized matter that I really wanted. So there are a couple things going on here. So first of all, we have this thing called, so we've got directional blur, we've got our little micro jitters, and the jitters are actually put together slightly more, so they're not all spaced out by one frame. They're actually, some of them are more kept together to make it feel more uneven. And then we've got this thing called color key. And now all the color key does is basically, well, it does that. I don't actually know what this is for. Like, I just kind of like was getting random stuff and just dragging it on and seeing what I could do with it. And this was one of them. And I just kind of realized, it does that. What could we do with that? So at that point, I just literally added it on, keyframed it, so that it kind of comes in for a second, and then it also comes in yet again back here. It comes in when she drops to the floor there, and you can actually see it's a bit like a wave, because it starts at like her body, then goes completely black, and then kind of moves away from her. So it's kind of like a bit of a wave effect, which kind of follows the impact motion that she has within our body. And again, this is what I spent most of my time on, was kind of getting these subtleties, making them right. And then, as you can see here, we got about 6 billion or so keyframes here for the directional blur, because as you can see a lot here, it changes direction a lot. If I turn this back on, like, it doesn't just stay still. It moves around quite a lot. See there, it has like a very quick like spin effect, like it goes, and it was kind of like, the philosophy here was, so start off as a large impact. Also here we got yet again another keyframed punch in, like it moves with him quite slowly, and then when it hits, it shoots straight back out, and again that's just following that inertia and that motion. It was quite an interesting thing to really kind of like feel and learn about. It was okay, how do I follow the inertia of this shot here to really make it feel right and not just feel like I'm adding stuff for the sake of it. You can see here, especially where how the lights kind of move in. That's where like directional blur is like really changing direction. It starts off as quite distorted, and then it starts kind of calming down a bit, and then you get this like really big one, which is like rubbing her nose. And if you've had a keen eye, you also noticed it doesn't look properly on here. When you export it's fine. You have this outer edge of brightening when she's kind of like wincing and that, and you have it here again too. Like the outside kind of brightens up for a second. And that idea actually came from Jack. He compared it to, you know when you play a video game and you get low in health, it's like, then you have like the red screen around it. He compared it to that. And originally had it as like a constant beating effect, where it was kind of like a white down, and a white gone, that kind of thing. Like this repeating pattern. But we realized that was just too much, and it wasn't really going the rhythm of the blurs or anything. So we're like, okay, let me just tailor it more to the actual action within the screen. But here's, I think, one of my favorite parts is this. Actually, I'll turn the sound effects on for that. So we have this kind of like these intercuts, and they're really quick. And this kind of discontinuity kind of adds to the chaos of it, because it's kind of like bang and then bang. It's like, I think that is quite stylized in a way, because it's kind of like, it's unnatural. It feels unnatural, but it doesn't feel wrong. And I really like, basically, here you can see the pattern. What we did with it, it was like a bam, ba bam, and then that's how I describe it. It's like, it's not like straight blurs. It's like, it's a bit of like a rhythm. It's like ba bum, and then ba bum, and that's kind of the pattern we went for. And yeah, again, it's just another one of those things that just works. If you just had it like this, it's kind of like, it's not terrible, but it doesn't feel right. But adding this additional layer of like this kind of like blur attack works really well, I think. And I was quite happy with how that came out. And then we have one more right at the end here. But the soundscape of this again, it's quite similar to the other. So we have that constant music in the background, a lot of music clips. You can see I've never had to have this many audio tracks for. A lot of it is because we have a lot of different Foley. That's how I get ahead, but the audio we'll talk about in a second. So if you're keeping your eye out down here, so basically we have the main track, which is the main music track, and then we have the audience track. And what I was doing is I was really abusing this thing called a parametric equalizer. So this is what was responsible for making this music sound distant. So as you can see here, basically this is like a generic low pass. You just adjust this, and this makes it sound more. This makes it sound a lot more like kind of in the background. Because if I was to put it here, it'd be like, it sounds a lot more in person. Whereas when you have it here, it sounds in the background. But you can also use this to actually just make the audio sound very funky. So for example, here in this section here, I made the bass really high, so it was very thumpy in the ears, and then that did I just, fuck it, yeah. And then that crosses over into this really thumpy version here, which is kind of like that headache in your ears, and you get that throbbing in your head, and then it kind of equals out a bit more into this like quieter version here. And then the crowd takes over, so the crowd audio takes over. And yeah, again, it was all about tailoring and balancing. I was kept changing it over and over again, because it was just about finding the right balance, the right in between, where it wasn't overbearing and it actually made sense. It wasn't for the sake of it. I actually made active decisions to say, hey, I should think this should be more bassy, and this one then come in. I wanted it to be like the voices in her head are like screaming at her, basically, and that's what I was really trying to emulate there. But yeah, so that was a lot of where the bulk of the work went. So Force Feeding the Virus, this is where we got Harrison's lovely music track, which I had to balance out a bit here. For example, I wanted this quiet section to last a bit longer, so I had to kind of cut out a quiet section, then stitch it in between the quiet sections, and then add a cross. So the savior of today is these cross gain effects. So basically these like transition the two clips together by keeping both of them at the same level instead of it being like fade out, fade in. And these are literally like a godsend. I'll tell you that. Another little Easter egg. More tread harshly sounds. Even more tread harshly sounds, which we love. It's never going to leave. It's always going to be around. Which is quite fun. The editing here again quite similar. So interesting little thing here. This is the same shot as this is the same shot as this shot over here. This shot here. This is the same shot as that one. So that's repurposing for you. It was a bit weird. So we have him rip it off, and then we have this. Technically, his hand going down here is meant to go back to this shot, but this is something you realize in editing. Sometimes your intention of, oh, this shot was for this, never really lines up, and sometimes you just have to change around. And the thing is, it works, because it goes from this to like this. Now, there's definitely a bit of a motion problem. Something when you shoot and edit is you want to always have motion carryover. Like, if you're just doing one shot like this, like, oh, okay, I want you to go and grab his mask and pull off the mask, never just say, oh, go and grab it. Always say grab and pull. And this is a mistake I actually made with the shot, I didn't say that, but always get them to do the full motion, because then it allows you to then carry it over better into the next shot. As you can see here, it just works a lot better. But yeah. But then we have this pull-up shot where it kind of pulls up to there, and it again works well. Go for it usually. Try to harshly sounds. And then here is where a lot more of the bread and butter came from. So there are these look like solid blocks, don't they? But if you zoom in, they are actually over 175 of those micro jitters, and all of them are different because they've slowly ramp up to get more and more stronger. As you can see, this took me too long. But you can see it starts getting stronger and stronger, and it also has these little micro moments where it's even stronger than it's meant to be. Like there, for example, it like kind of bursts out a bit for a second and then kind of calms down but still stays the same pace. And then it kind of, here it matches into, and yet again we're using these little like blur transition effects again throughout this. And this is actually where I first started using them. I actually used them here first before I used them in Briggs and Speech, but yeah, I thought that was fun. And the other thing is, I think one of my favourite effects here is this scream punch out. So this is actually zoomed in and it screams and like kind of very subtly pulls out again. And yet again, it's subtlety. It's all about subtlety. There's a lot of fucking keyframes in this for all the blurs. And there's also additional camera movement too. Yet again, following the inertia, like it goes up and down. A lot went into just these shots alone. And it was really because these were like the standard shots. I also have this color emboss effect that's very subtle. So if you see, she kind of goes all crunchy for a second there. Like there, she goes a bit crunchy for a second. And yeah, again, it's just to add more sound effects. And here again, we have these little micro jitter transitions. It goes bam bam and then shoo. But yeah, the audio escape. So we have. I thought, okay, what would match this? What would match this? And I had an idea of like, wait a minute, what if? So I want it to be like this constant blah 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 blah, blah sound. What makes a constant blah blah blah, blah sound? A helicopter. That's what makes that sound. So I got a helicopter sound, and then just slowed it down, and then added that onto it, and it works really well. I was quite happy with that. It sounds a bit goofy like this, but if you turn on everything else, then it cleans it up a bit, and then it's not as like noticeable. It kind of sounds like a really rapid heartbeat, and I was quite happy with that. Then we have this kind of like brief cut, and then we kind of come back to this section here. It's actually like a bit of like an after credit scene in a weird way. I actually forgot I had this, but this is when Darren turns. Interesting thing here is, so obviously he's got his screams, his normal screams, but then what I did is I put over a pitch changer, and then I just set it to Dark Lord and adjusted it a bit, and this makes him sound like a crazy person. And I thought that really just worked, because I felt like I didn't really show the zombie part of it, and I forgot I had filmed this, so I was like, okay, might as well add this in as soon as possible. And it worked. And actually, a little fun thing here is this audio clip here is actually cut from here, and just put here again, and changed a bit. And it's the same for this bit. This bit here is actually the same as this bit, I just dragged it over, slowed it down, and added a picture onto it. It's really all smoke and mirrors all the time. But yeah. And then eventually what that is it culminates in this, which is kind of everything put together. Basically you can just drag the sequence straight in and it puts it straight in. And this is where, but I actually did something, and then you have an intro here, but this is actually where I did something quite interesting. So the problem I had was, in between each thing, it was like, okay, what do I do with the in-between sections? Originally, it would just be like scene 2, and then scene 3. Well, then Harrison said to me, thank you Harrison, said to me, make it a bit more interesting, make it feel like a bit more connected, make it feel like the kind of intro to here, right? And I was like, okay, that's a good idea. So what I did was, I added this like contents table effect, which was so cool. I was so happy with that, and every time it cuts in between, it just like I love it a lot. It's so subtle, but it works. And the vial, which is the one where he dies, has the skull on it. Very, very, very funny thing here, this sound you hear in the background. So I was like, when I made this contents table, I was like, I heard something in my head. I heard a sound effect or like a music. I was like, okay, this would work perfectly with this. And you know when you recognize the sound, but you're trying to remember where it's from? I was thinking, I was like, where is this from? Where's this from? And I was like, oh my god, I know where it's from. I know where it's from. It's from this. It's from the shitty, like the shitty 2009 video game that I played. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe this is where it's from. So basically, this is the loading screen sound effect for Terminator Salvation, the game. This game sucks, by the way. I bought it, I played it, it sucks balls. But I was like, I can't believe that this is something that's made it into my work. And that made me laugh so much. I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I just thought it was so fun. It's like, someone watching this is never going to think he's using the loading screen sound effect from Terminator Salvation, the video game. The actual like thing here, so originally these were actually just called Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3, Scene 4, but now I changed it to like actually have names and I made them the something, the something, the something. I thought that'd be interesting. Yeah, again, these are quite static, but this little arrow thing is animated and it's eased in and eased out. Like it's not harsh, it actually eases in and out. Which is great. It's just a setting. You can just go to temporal information and it just does it for you. It's great. It also has a little bit of a blinking effect. I just thought it'd add a bit more to it. If it was just kind of static, it wouldn't do much. But basically, I added this in between all of them, and then when it gets to the vial, the skull actually blinks with it too. Because like, why not? Yeah, again. I loved it. I was so happy. I also in the beginning have this little message here. Basically, because the problem is this entire film has so much sub bass in it. If you've been watching this without headphones, you probably have not heard any of the background music, and that's not because my audio mixing is bad. It's just because it's a very sub bass heavy background sound effect. It makes it so you need to have space to hear it, like physical space within the speakers. Your phone speakers should be okay, but smaller speakers like screen speakers are just not going to work well because they just don't have the space within them to have that physical bass. So that's why I said headphones are recommended. Instead of people watching it and be like, hey, the audio in this film sucks, they'll actually understand, okay, why it's like how it is. So I very quickly added this in to kind of cover my ass. Then for the credits, so I'll get to the second. This track's from the Sacrifice trailer for Left 4 Dead 1. It's a DLC trailer. I just stole the audio from it. This effect, this inky effect, was such a happy accident. Look, I knew what I was doing. Basically, I found this thing called Roughen Edges. I had a completely different idea, but basically I was going to roughen the edge around the screen itself. But then I applied it to a mask. Basically, I applied it to here. And basically, it has this like effect where it kind of starts appearing, and it's just like, yeah, it just works really well. And that's literally just from adjusting like this, just literally smacking up this, smacking it down. Really, you can see here, it kind of like makes it disappear. But again, this effect is not designed to do this. It's designed for something else. But the fact is, I'm using something, and you just have to mess around with it until it works, and it works. It really works when it shouldn't really. And to add on to this, I added the opacity mask, so where it comes in, it actually has this opacity mask that's kind of dragging itself across, if you see here. It's actually making its way across, so it's not... Because if this wasn't here, for example, if this mask wasn't here, it would just kind of be like... kind of straight up. Which is not terrible, it's not terrible, but I kind of wanted this bit more of this kind of like motion to where it's kind of like coming in from the left first and then coming through. And I used this effect for the credits too. Yeah, again, same thing. I didn't use a mask this time, I did just do it straight up, but it works here too, and it's just more interesting. Instead of it just being like, oh, appear, disappear, I like added it with this kind of thing. But yeah, the trailer, little bonus. So the trailer, I used the same intro, but I retimed all. This is just a pain in the ass, by the way. Re-keyframing these to match the music, so you can hear in these drum beats. That's when they appear. That was such a pain in the ass to retime. I was not happy about that. But then it cuts into it. It's like. So here, instead of using the thing of like, oh, dragging the sequence, I just kind of stole the raw clips, like copy and pasting from them, because it gave me a bit more tactility, because I had to re-lengthening them and that kind of stuff. And it was just a lot easier to use the actual clip straight out instead of it being like instead of it like using the sequence clips. The balance of this is, I wish I used more shots from this beginning shot, because this color palette, like if you watch this, it stands out so much more, this kind of single shot, because the rest of the shots are so so subdued with their colors. Another thing I had to do is, all of these are the color grades, because every single one of these has a slightly different color grade. They always try and do the same thing, but they have to be adjusted differently because each shot was different. So I had to also copy and paste all the color grades for each one, so they all had their own custom color grade, which is quite funny. But I was really happy with how this came out in the end. And yet again, you can see here I used that inky, splotchy, bringing kind of effect. This is where I actually started it with first, before I applied it to the end credits. But yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Fucking hell, my mouth is dry. The grade. So the grade I have not put as much effort into as I did Run DFR, because I just didn't have time, to be honest with you. The grade is this kind of khaki color. I don't know if you guys know that color. It's like a khaki kind of color. These like kind of this like dirty brown kind of a color sometimes. Where's the sequences? Brings some speech. There we go. So you can see in his hair especially, it's this kind of like subdued brown color, and the I also just slapped the saturation down a lot. And you can see here, this is like with and then without. It's this. I'm quite happy with it, and it also highlights the edges a lot stronger. Like you can see with his face here, the shine of his face is a lot like less, but with this is a lot more kind of that brown, kind of khaki color. And it reminded me of 300, Zack Snyder's 300, with like the kind of comic book look. Now it's definitely not perfect because I didn't do it. Again, I didn't have enough time to properly grade it and like make sure it was all clean and perfect. So it is a bit touchy in places, especially when she gets headbutt. There is quite an inconsistency. Like here, for example, that looks very different to how the other shots look. But honestly, I don't have the time to try and fix that. I'm sorry. But I don't think anyone knows anyway. Yeah, but you can see here, like, her colour there is very different to how it is there. But honestly, I do not care. I haven't got the time. But that was kind of just the overall colour grade I approached it for. But yeah, again, you have to change it per sequence, because each sequence was filmed in a different environment or like different lighting conditions. So, yeah. But that is pretty much it, really. It was a bit more straightforward. Still took a lot of time, but it was a bit more straightforward, you know. But I'm quite happy with how this project came out in the end. Thing was the poster. So there's two versions of the poster. We have this full frame poster, and then there's also, if I can find it real quickly, there's also a, is it this? It is this. There's also a 16:9 version, but we'll just look at the full version, and it's pretty simple. So this is actually the photo from the makeup test, because I was looking at the film and there was no specific frames that I wanted to use. So I was like, okay, I'll use this. And my original intention was to have all the characters in this black space, like kind of like use screenshots and put like the characters in this black space. But I honestly, one, didn't have time, and two, I just thought it'd be too clunky. Like it wouldn't match the rest of it. Like it's this kind of rounded shape here, so it wouldn't really fit the characters properly in it. But basically, I hate Photoshop, I'll let you know. But basically, what this is that we have this black background, and then what we do is we basically grabbed our Oscar here, and then what we did was we keyframed around him to select his head out and then cut his head out, and then we got this little fun rubber here, and we basically just put the hardness to 0, make it super big, and then very, very carefully we would kind of do this basically, and that would create this kind of gradient effect. I originally tried to use the literal gradient effect. It does not work. I have no idea how to do this. I don't know what this is. So instead it was like, yeah, using the rubber, kind of just like yeah, like kind of just subtly going like wee wee, and then that created this. And basically what that's doing is it's rubbing out this top layer to reveal this bottom layer. That's how that's working. Because you can see here, there's a lot more here, and basically what we've done is, yeah, like rubbed it out. Unfortunately, we lost the veins by doing this, which is quite a shame, but I couldn't really get the veins in and the side of his face in, so that was kind of a sacrifice we had to make. You can still see a bit of it, but it would have been cool if you could see it going up to his eyes. Maybe I could try and add that in. I have no idea. I could. We also added a human saturation layer, so you can see here this focuses the eyeballs, like focuses on his eyes. Oh my god, let's not do that. Whereas this focuses more on his skull, so his head. So what we did is we put the saturation up for the blood in his eyes, and then turned the saturation down for his head to kind of make this stand out more. Then after that, we have two alternative versions. So version 1 we have is Brigson here instead. Like we have Brigson here. Basically same thing with his layer too. So we just kind of trimmed out his layer, and then yeah, again did the same rubber thing where if I select this layer, you can see here we did the same rubbery thing where we're just like slowly doing that, and that created that effect. I kind of worked that out on accident, by the way. I don't know how to use Photoshop, but it worked well. And then the second version we have is, if we remove this, we have this mask version here. Yet again, same thing. Select it, cut out the mask, and then woo, like rub it out. And then here we go. We got that kind of effect there. Interesting little things I had to solve. So we had this problem where his mouth was cut off, which was really annoying. Like his mouth was cut off. So and also his side of his cheek here, when we masked it, was very sharp. Like it was very like just sudden cut. So I had to go in by the micro layer, by the pixel, and like slowly rub it out. It's like just soften the edge, use a rubber, and just very gently like go down it and rub it out. Which took a hell of a lot of time, I'll tell you that. Did not enjoy that whatsoever. And this kind of goes the same with 16:9. It was the same thing here. Yeah, again, we just had to crop it. I basically made him smaller to fit him in a bit more. You can see his head's cut off a bit more. This worked well for Instagram, whereas this I had to do this for the YouTube, because like, obviously the YouTube posters are like 16:9. Another fun little issue I had to fix with bloody Brigson's face originally. I spent so much time doing this. I cut off his nose accidentally, so I went back in. I was trying to relayer his nose back in, and then I realized, why don't I just restart? It took me longer to try and relayer his nose than just to restart this, because this wasn't hard to do. So, yeah. Actually, I'm also realizing here, like, I put a lot of work. Oh my god, that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to move him. I also painted in his lip here. You don't even see it. Like originally you could see his lip, and it kind of had this weird dip in it, so I went in and like color grabbed and then painted in his lip, and you look from a distance, it's fine. Like it's not bad. Like this is as close as you're gonna get to it, so you can't really tell, but it was also kind of pointless because you don't even see it anymore. But that was just a little fun thing that's hidden under the layers. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Standard font, I couldn't be fucked. But yeah, that's your little bonus.